Music is all about the distances. Memorizing notes and learning a whole bunch of theory can be useful, but you have to remember music is a listening art, not a visual art. It's all about the ears. The problem is too many people are relying on their eyes. They learn positions of notes on the piano visually, but then their ears become lazy. And then they never have to recognize the distances between notes. You see, when you listen to a melody, you're not actually hearing the actual notes or the actual frequencies. You're hearing the distances between the notes. You're hearing the leaps and the jumps between notes. That's what makes the melody recognizable. Not many people know what a C sounds like. But if I go from C to G, you can hear the distance is greater than if I went from a C to an E. Some notes just sound closer together. Some notes just sound far apart. Even if you've never had a music lesson before, you have a sense of judging the distances between sounds. Now, how accurate you become at judging the distances between these notes improves and gets better as you take more lessons and your ears become more refined. Now, there are two very important distances I want us to learn. Of course, we could learn all the distances and be able to recognize them, but two distances are very fundamental and crucial, and these will shape how you refer to chords, and these will shape how we take the rest of this lesson. So I want you to pay real close attention to this. The two distances we need to learn are a whole step distance and a half step distance. A whole step distance is created when you go from one note to the next note, but you leave one note in between. So for example, when you go from C to D, not just any C or any D on the piano, because I told you there's lots of C's and lots of D's, but I mean the C and D that are next to each other. So when you go from C to D, you're actually skipping over the C sharp, right? Remember, we can also call this a D flat. So you skip over this black note to get to D. That means there's one note in between C and D. So this distance whereby we leave one note in between is called a whole step distance. Now, if you had gone from a C to a C sharp instead, that is no longer a whole step distance. In fact, we call that now a half step distance. It kind of makes sense and it's kind of obvious when you think about it, but it's fundamental and it has to be learned. Unlike sharps and flats, whole steps and half steps don't tell us the direction that we're going in. They simply tell us the distance we've traveled. So from C to B is a half step distance because there's no notes in between. So if you think about it, C to D is going backwards, but that doesn't matter. All we care about is the distance of how far we've jumped in terms of notes. So from C to B flat is a whole step distance because there is a note in between, and this note in between is a B. I can't stress how important this information is. Understanding that music is all about the distances is something I came to the realization of after many years of playing the piano. But I want you to start getting the hang of this right now. This is why a tune like Mary Had a Little Lamb can be played starting on any note, because it's not about the notes that we play, it's about the distances you're hearing. So if the distances are the same regardless of which note you started on, then you're still gonna hear the same tune. Twinkle Little Star can be started by playing on C, for example, but you could also play the song Twinkle Little Star and start on G, for example. You can still recognize the tune. I mean, I could play the song if I started on F and you'd still recognize the tune. It's because I'm playing similar distances, okay? And we can get more complicated and understand more distances in future lessons, but from here, I just want you to learn half steps and whole steps. A whole step distance is when we have skip one note to get to the next, and a half step distance is when we go to the very next note without leaving any gaps in between, okay?